The thing we wanted to talk about today is Alaska, because Alaska, first of all, is a trip I just came back from, and it was my third trip to Alaska. And after selling travel for 30 years, it's a destination that's always on everyone's to-do list. And Alaska is a very complicated destination. So the perfect trip to Alaska has a lot to do with your budget, your time, and what you personally like to do, as well as your mobility. So what we wanted to do is sort of outline for you the different types of trips that are available. Alaska is such a large place, and it is the most repeated destination in the world. And I relate that to the size of the state, the vastness of the destination, so therefore it's hard to do in one trip. And also, depending on the weather and the time of the year, sometimes there's something on your list like glaciers, calving, or bubble net feeding of whales that you didn't get to do based on God and nature. So if you can only do one part of Alaska, you have to do it by sea. You have to do the Inside Passage. So if your time is limited and your budget's a little more limited, I would encourage you to consider a cruise out of Seattle. I find with a lot of people, they wait to do Alaska as well as Europe because they think they need 2 or 3 weeks. And although that's ideal, a lot of us working folks don't have that kind of time, and a lot of you younger folks don't have that kind of money. So if you do a cruise out of Seattle, the airfares are easier, more manageable, and you can do it in 7 full days. Obviously, depending on when you're seeing this, and it depends on the time of the year and the cruise ship, you can do for 2 people for 7 nights a cruise as low as $1,500. Yes, that's for 2 people. And it hits the premier spots in Alaska. Let's just talk about Seattle for the moment and that itinerary. If you do that itinerary or you do the longer itinerary, you still are going to hit Ketchikan. And Ketchikan is the most interesting city. It rains 340 days a year. Our last trip, we were blessed with perfect weather in which the Alaskans were diving off of bridges and everybody was in a flurry. It was actually warmer in Ketchikan, Alaska than it was in Michigan. Ketchikan is one of the most beautiful parts of Alaska because of the fjords. You need to take to the air at some point in Alaska. And if you do it in Ketchikan, you do a float plane into the fjords, and these are traditional float planes. You go into the gorgeous part of Ketchikan and you actually land. They let you get out on the pontoons, and that's really special. Also, salmon fishing. It's the salmon capital of the world, so salmon and halibut. You need to book in advance to do that. But even the fishing catalogs will tell you the best fishing excursion in the world is to take a fishing excursion off of a cruise ship because of the fishing licenses. Also in Ketchikan are the famous totem pole areas, the eagles when the salmon are running, which are usually July and August. The eagles are fishing, the bears are fishing, there's a lot of activity as well. Then the next port that you hit is Juneau. Juneau is probably my favorite cruise port, and it's because of the glaciers. We recently did the Solstice, which is a celebrity ship, and they had the most unique shore excursion I've ever seen off of a large ship. And that is they brought a explorer ship, gangwayed it to the large ship. It held 120 people. You walked right off of the 3,000 person ship onto this 120 person ship, and we got to cruise very close to the glaciers and get to see a very unusual glacier, which is the South Sawyer Glacier. And of course, we were able to do what every Alaskan traveler dreams of, and that is to see some astounding glacier calving. And glacier calving is when pieces of the glacier fall off into the sea, and the sound, the sight. in the background. We were all just so grateful to have that experience, and you're surrounded by harbor seals floating on icebergs. I know it sounds magical, and it is, and that is an exceptional experience. Our first trip in Juneau, Tom and I took to the air in a helicopter, and I would highly recommend that you do this at some point, but you need to do the pilot's choice to Glacier Landing. If you do just a helicopter trip, the likelihood is they'll take you to Mendenhall, you'll get off for a little while, they'll pick you up and they'll take you back. A pilot's choice means the pilot gets to choose where to land. So regardless of the weather, you get to see the glacier scenery. We flew through 2 peaks. I wanted to say to our pilot, you don't have to get quite that close to the glaciers, but again, lived to tell about it, so it was a wonderful experience. You get off, you're in glacier boots, which they give you, and the color of the glacier water is wonderful. And our pilot got us all together. It happened to be one of my birthdays, and he took me to the spot where he married his wife, and he had everyone in our group hold our breath, and the silence was deafening. I mean, because you're up in a position where the air is clear and there's not a sound. So it's pretty amazing. Whenever you go into the air, you're going to have to go into your wallet, because if you go into the air, minimally it's going to cost you somewhere between $200 and $500 per person. But my saying is always this: you won't remember what you spent, but you're always going to remember what you did. But then the one thing that was on my list was to do the bubble net feeding of the whales. This is the only time of the year where these solitary animals come together and work together to fish. And I was blessed to be able to do that, as were a lot of the people that were traveling with us on our group. And this bubble net feeding is they make clicking noises, and they surround the fish, and then they all come up at once they've created this bubble net, and you see all of these whales breach the water at the same time. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and as I said, I think the reason why people keep going back, and I got to see it, yay! So Juneau's wonderful. Also happens to be, I think, one of my favorite places to shop. I only shop for things that are indigenous, made by local people, anywhere that I go in the world. And you can get these whalebone carvings. I think this one's very, very special. Soapstone carvings are really special too. So keep your eyes open for that. Then from Juneau you head into Skagway, and Skagway is really unique. They don't even have a doctor there. This was a very important city in the gold rush, and the most wonderful thing to do there, historical, the History Channel has had this before, is the White Pass Railway. It's part of the Yukon Gold Rush. This is an engineering feat of our lifetime for all you civil engineers out there, and the views are absolutely wonderful. You can stand on the platforms between the 2 cars, which most people don't realize. So when you're coming around, you can get wonderful views, which is great for you shutterbugs, as well as take in the sights and the sounds. But it's very historical and beautiful. Skagway is also near Haines. You can take a public ferry over to Haines. I love Haines. And the entire Skagway experience is very unique and important to American history, which I'm embarrassed to say or delighted to say I discovered on one of my first trips. And then most of these cruises also stop on the island of Victoria, which is Canadian, of course, but very British. And my favorite thing to do there is Bouchard Gardens, which is for any gardener on their list of places to go in the world. It's the most fantastic garden, and just a beautiful destination. And the Empress Hotel is there, which is where the Queen always stays. High tea at the Empress is really quite famous, so you get a little bit of that Canadian feel too. So that touches on all of the major cruise ports.